everybody to the first Harbor Committee meeting of 2021. Wishing you all a happy new year and a better year for all of us in 2021. So I will call the meeting officially to order. I have, if anybody else comes in, Paula, Jeff, Sean, Barbara, if you come in, just let us know. Or Lauren, you keep an eye on it so we can make sure we know everybody who's here. You've all got an agenda, and I'd like to stick to the agenda if we can. The first item on the agenda is a discussion of the implementation of the plan of the Harbor Committee. And Lauren has done a lot of work on that. As you know, we've done a lot of work prior to that. And what I'd like to do is ask Lauren to go through the draft to kind of explain it. We'll have a discussion about that. I sent out just a kind of as a straw, not a straw man, but a straw person, whatever we call it today, of a potential committee makeup. But as you see, you know, we can have several proposals for a slate for people that want to do it. I can also say a couple of things. First of all, any committee we have, any subcommittee we have, infrastructure committee, will be open. Anybody that wants to join, anybody who wants to participate, whether they're members of the committee or not, are certainly welcome. The whole objective here is to address the 50+ recommendations of the Harbor Plan and see if we can start to implement those as suggested in the plan. I did talk to Chris Senior earlier today, or was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday actually. And we may get some additional help on a consulting basis to do this. I also heard from Jack Buckley, who has offered to help with the implementation of the environmental ecological issues, and that would be terrific. And Susan, I assume that you would be part of that. So with that, I'd like to ask Lauren to give us an update or a kind of description of what this draft subcommittee charge is for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, would you like us to hold our questions to the end, or do you want them?
Well, a question pertinent to this?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead. Why don't you?
I'm saying as she's going through the draft, and I have some questions and some.
Oh, okay. So why don't you let her go through the draft, and then you can.
Just amendment. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen, so in case folks don't have this in front of them, we can all see what we're looking at. So if you can see the document here, this is just a draft subcommittee charge for your discussion. This is based on the feedback that I had gotten at our last go around of discussions. I had asked the members to take a look at the priorities and the implementation goals that had been previously discussed and come out of the Harbor Plan and sort of, you know, categorize how we might do this. In that, it was evident to me that while there's a lot of different opportunities and priorities, one of the first and foremost things that everybody said was support for the commercial fishing infrastructure and fleet down there, and how we can, you know, further implement the capital planning improvements and projects that are needed. So my suggestion is that while I think there's a lot of other opportunities and discussion to be had and other implementation categories, I do think that this is one category that could easily be chunked off and begin working now. I'm not recommending that we dissolve the Harbor Committee by any means. This would just be a subcommittee of the Harbor Committee, similar to how the Master Plan Implementation Committee has recently broken into working groups, with the intent that the working groups go off and sort of you know, move different specific priorities and initiatives along, and they report back to the full committee regularly. So with that, this draft, I'm just calling it the Harbor Infrastructure Planning Subcommittee. The mission would be to provide advisory guidance and coordination for capital planning and implementation of the Cohasset Harbor infrastructure needs as defined in the Municipal Harbor Plan and determined by the subcommittee. I'm recommending 5 Cohasset residents of course with assistance from town staff and consultants as applicable. I'm suggesting the harbor master, 1 representative of the commercial fishermen, and 3 citizens at large, which I would recommend either be appointed members of the Cohasset Harbor Committee or have some sort of expertise in waterfront infrastructure, capital planning, engineering, or some sort of relevant field. The ex officio town staff that would support this committee would be Brian Joyce from the Department of Public Works, Don Pyatt from the Finance Department, and myself from Planning. And hopefully, as Tim mentioned, we may be able to get some assistance from a consultant that could help with implementation and sort of grant funding assistance, grant preparation, I should say. And then these are just a couple of sort of framing points for this charge, just that this would be selected by a vote of the full Harbor Committee. I believe this does need to be approved by the Select Board, and that would be 1-year terms that could renew annually. This would provide advisory guidance and coordination for implementation and recommendations relative to the public and commercial maritime infrastructure. This would report regularly to the Harbor Committee on recommendations for actions necessary to implement the goals. That would include timelines, resources that might be needed, whether it's grant funding, different sort of responsibilities. And this would be regularly communicated as well up the chain, if you will, to the Select Board by the Harbor Committee chair and the sort of chair of this smaller subcommittee as necessary. I'm recommending that this group develop timetables specifically for various projects, activities, and recommendations, similar to how we have a capital budget plan for our general planning, general budget expenses. And then something that was recommended to me by both the Department of Public Works and the Finance Department was, do we want to include a provision that this group would sunset, whether it be after a specific predetermined length of time, or if there's a specific task accomplishment that we want to mark as the trigger point for a sunset. So with that, I want to turn it back over to the committee for your discussion and how you want to move forward on this.
Okay, thanks, Lauren. I think the main focus is really the implementation of the harbor plan. I mean, you call it an infrastructure planning, but the coordination of capital planning and implementation, that's fine. But I think the implementation is really key. And obviously that contains a lot of other things. My comments about the length of time sunsetting, I would say you could have it sunset in 10 years. If we're not done in 10 years, it ought to be sunsetted. But I think that's, and I won't be around to see the sunset. So I think those are just my comments. So why don't the rest of the committee, if you have comments, why don't you take the floor?
I'll give it a go.
Okay.
First off, thank you. And then Lauren, I know, you sent this to us a while ago, and I've spent some time looking at it, and I think it really reflects what we wanted to do to fold in, more professionals and subject matter experts from the town, et cetera. So this is, I like the plan. I'm, intend to vote for it. But there's just some procedural things from my drafting experience that I think we need. First off, we have no authority to appoint anybody. We're an advisory committee under the town bylaws. So the only people who can appoint anybody, and I even had a little chat with, I was talking to some selectmen today on another matter, and I brought this up, and they have to appoint anybody to anything. So I would just delete the words shall be selected by a vote of the Harbor Committee and just said shall be approved by the Select Board. That doesn't mean that we cannot propose a slate or some recommendations, but we have no authority to appoint anybody to anything official. We certainly don't have any authority to dictate to a town employee that they have to be involved in this. So this has to be adopted by the town, but I know in talking to Diane Kennedy, a couple of people, and Christina, that's my understanding that, we're going to be on, the Harbor Committee is going to be on an agenda item in the very near future. So this, I would imagine, to be something that could be easily adopted. So that would be one recommendation. Another just drafting recommendation is that I would just put language that the CHIP will report regularly to the Harbor Committee on recommendations. I would just put it up under the mission statement so that it makes more sense as far as drafting is concerned. As far as sunsetting, how many years people are going to be appointed, I think, I don't think the board, the selectmen will buy anything more than 3 years. I mean, because anything more than that is kind of silly. And other than that, I think it's in good shape.
Other members of the committee, comments?
Oh, the only other comment I was going to make, I'm sorry, is I know that there is, and Lauren, maybe you can tell me if I'm interpreting this correctly, but I know there's been a big movement on the selectmen, by the selectmen, to include more people into various projects throughout the community. And so I think, you know, we may want to think broader than the handful of people we've already thought of for any slate. I think the feeling is going to be that they're going to have to, you know, let the community know that this is something that they could be involved in.
Anybody else have comments?
Well, if we're going to appoint, or the selectmen are going to appoint a committee to advise the Harbor Committee on the implementation of what we've discussed for the last 3 years. I was under the impression the last meeting we had, Tim, we talked about getting that McGee girl or getting a general contractor hired by the town to oversee one or two of these projects that have been discussed and proposed.
Can we hold that one, Matt? It was a project manager that I've been talking to you and Chris Senior about.
Okay.
So if you can hold that, I will put it on my notes and let's touch that at the end. That's,
Yeah, I mean, because that would also be helpful, because I know we voted at the last meeting that we were going to have a report out so that everybody in the committee would know about some of these other discussions.
yeah, and unfortunately, I don't have anything really to report, but that's what I would say. Nothing to report yet. Unfortunately, I've been trying, but I don't have anything positive to report. Okay, anything else, Matt?
By appointing these subcommittees, I just don't know. I can't see the progress being made. But
And I think to answer to that, if I may, Tim, is the answer to that is that we now would get permission from the town to engage these departments that can actually actualize things. None of us have the authority to make anything happen, but people from these different, you know, public works, finance, planning, they can, you know, they can make things work. I mean, was that your thought process, Lauren?
Yes, I just, in my observations and the feedback that I've been getting, it seemed that because there's so many broad topics and things to be discussed by the full Harbor Committee, this would be one way of sort of speeding up the process of implementation, having conversations by allowing certain people to focus on this. Similar to, you know, I'm using this as an example of the Master Plan Implementation Committee has a subgroup working on a zoning bylaw review. They have another group working on economic development. So, you know, it's not taking away from the rest of the things that the Master Plan Implementation Committee touches on and does, but it's allowing something to sort of move in its own track and have a concentration on it.
I just got an email from Sean Keneally. He can't get in, so I don't know if he's in a waiting room.
I just promoted him. He should, I'm going to ask him to unmute now.
There he is.
if these subcommittees can implement some of the projects that we've been talking about, I'm 100% behind them. If this is just an advisory position, then I'm not necessarily behind them.
The way it would work is, as I see it anyway, with this, once this committee is in place, that committee would then identify priority projects, and they would put together groups of people to do the priority projects, whether it's Government Island, whether it's moorings, whether it's dredging, whether it's the breakwater, whatever it is, and bring in the expertise both from the town and extent of the town, people that could help do that. Ultimately, anything that those committees come up with must go through the select board. There's nothing, as Lisa points out, we don't have any authority. All we can do is advise or recommend. But that's the select board. My understanding from all the select board members that I've talked to is they're 100% behind doing this. It's just, they don't know how to do it. And what we've got to do is we've got to get the people that do know how to do it to recommend how to do it. I mean, this is the problem going on with the Government Island issue, which I'm happy to talk about at the end of this meeting. But I think you'll find, while the process is frustrating, it does get results at the end of the day. But there's a lot of political work that has to be done. We have to make sure that the town manager and the select board are behind it and supportive of it. And I think they are, although sometimes it's hard to know, but I think they are. Anyway, okay. Have you got other questions?
Someone's gonna have to establish a budget for some of these projects, and
Yes.
you know, the experts who we bring in are gonna have to have clout with the selectmen, with the select board and the
Yes.
town
And-
manager.
You're absolutely right. All of the projects, as I recall, just kind of going through all 50 of them in my mind right now, have a budget that goes from 0 to probably 10 or $20 million. So obviously the ones closer to 0 would be easier to put together. The others, there is money available. In fact, I talked to Diane Kennedy today, and or no, I didn't talk to her. I emailed with her, but she's in agreement. And Chris Senior suggested that we get money for the commercial fishing fleet from this stimulus package that Congress has just so generously passed, I think. And I've talked to, we've got Beth Cassoni is actively involved in that as well.
Mhm.
And Congressman Lynch will be a help. So there's money that's around. We do have to get a budget. There has to be a budget, but then there are various sources to fund that budget.
Mhm.
So we'll work on that.
Okay.
Yes, Lauren.
I just wanted to add, that's why I think having the finance director be an ex officio advisory to this committee is integral to this working out. And I actually spoke with him today. He wasn't able to attend tonight. He had a conflict, but he is willing and able to attend any of these meetings in the future to advise as necessary.
Great.
Great.
Terrific. Okay. Anybody else have any? Yes, Susan. Susan.
So just the budget numbers that were in the harbor plan, I don't recall having very much conversation about those budget numbers or what would be entailed in making each of those 50 recommendations happen. So I don't know whether those are really, are they set in stone or are they kind of arbitrary? Because it seemed to me that they were kind of arbitrary, and some of them looked like they were way more expensive than they would be, and there's other parts that were like parts of others, like thinking about the moorings. Like you kind of have to do the bathymetry of the harbor to do all the rest of it. And anyway, it just seemed like I don't know that those budget numbers were very well researched, and please let me know if we're sticking with those.
Well,
and then my other comment is, I think last time we met, we talked about when we actually decide what the priorities of those 50 recommendations were. I thought that we had said that we thought that would be the deciding what the priorities were was something that all of us should be involved in contributing our insight to. Rather than, I understand the difference between deciding what the priorities are and implementing the priorities. So I'm not sure if I misheard you the way you said that.
Yeah, to be honest, Tim, the way you just presented it, it was if, all the work we had done in prioritization was just not important, and that this other subgroup was going to then make up the priorities. I mean, I thought we had gone through a process to start enumerating priorities.
okay. I think we have priorities. We have priorities, and what this committee that we're talking about now would do was implement those priorities. That's number one. So I don't think anybody's
Okay, so then the way we need to define what 5 priorities are, if they've already been defined.
Well,
let's-
we've all submitted our priorities, haven't we got, didn't we get a list? Lauren, don't we have a list of priorities? I think we do.
I submitted mine to Lauren, but I don't know that mine match up with anybody else's. Where do we deliberate on where the priority, on which the priorities are?
This document was presented at our October meeting,
Yeah.
which I believe was, everyone put their priorities in. I believe Lauren went through all the lists. I believe there was a lot of duplication and so if it helps, Laura, do you want to say how you, what you received and how this was put together? Because I took this as a project of the committee after the submittal of priorities.
We submitted all that to Laura
Yes.
back in October. All
Yes,
our priorities, and then you were gonna sift through them and then, and either decide or prioritize from your end.
Okay, Lauren, how would you
The
like?
town's been constantly saying that the number one priority is the commercial fishing fleet. So I never use the word assume, but I would hope that the rebuilding of Government Island Pier would be a number one priority. From that point down, I'm not sure how the list is going to go. It's be up to if we're going to hire new experts to form new committees to determine what the priorities are going to be. Then we're going to be lost in the shuffle, and then they're going to have their own priorities, and so it's just going to be diluted down the road. So.
Lauren, can you explain to us where our priorities are at this point?
certainly. So, and again, this is just my understanding of the priorities. So back in October, the presentation that Lisa referenced, it was evident to me that from the different array of priorities that came in, support for the commercial and infrastructure fishing fleet was a priority that everyone identified as a top priority. Based on that, it seemed that there were a lot of other sort of, I put them into buckets and categories of where things might go. I can't tell you specifically what will happen in terms of prioritization beyond that. I think there's a lot more discussion to be had in terms of how and what we pick to tackle first. But my interpretation was that we could begin to sort of branch this into different tracks by continuing a discussion for some of the other items, but parsing out the items that are clearly related to infrastructure and capital planning and the needs related to that. So that was why I suggested breaking into this subcommittee as well as another subcommittee for continuing prioritization for the other topics. But I just was suggesting this as an option because if we don't start somewhere, I think that we could continue to try to reprioritize. I don't think at any given point we're going to have everybody in total agreement as to exactly how we tackle this, but I think that there's a clear, consensus that we need to support the commercial and capital infrastructure needs of the harbor.
Lauren, could we package some of these priorities together into, like the dredging projects could be packaged with the environmental concerns. We could package them together and then we get a better idea of what, how they would be implemented, I would think. And you kind of have them all separate, 50 priorities all separate. I just think that grouping them in packages would be a better way to do it.
I would agree. And I think actually in the implementation chapter of the harbor plan, there are ways that it does sort of break out things that can piggyback off of one another. I think the thing I'm trying to assist the committee achieve here is I know that there's so many of the items that Tim mentioned earlier, there's a lot of, we need to figure out how to fund these and how to schedule and strategize when and how to do these. So that was where the idea came in for sort of a capital plan that was specific to the harbor infrastructure needs. And it's not to say that our dredging plan can also consider environmental impacts and other related goals in the harbor plan, but we need to have a starting point somewhere.
Yes.
The other, let me just address the budget issue that Susan raised. I don't believe there was any budget per se in the harbor plan. I think what I have said since the beginning is that it looks to me as though over the course of the next 10 years between public, private, and nonprofit investment, we will be looking at between $50 and $100 million invested in Cohasset Harbor. So that's pretty much the extent of it. And that's a pretty big and broad number. I think what the committees, the subcommittees have to do for each project is to look at what the economics are of accomplishing the implementation of those projects and create a budget. And once the budget is created, then we have to find out where the budget is going to be funded from. I don't think the town is in a position to fund a lot of it, but the town is in a position to fund some. There are state grants, there's private money, there's nonprofit money, there's a lot of different sources. So that's not up to us necessarily, but it's up to the subcommittee to do that.
May
Tim,
I suggest a further amendment to the document we're trying to accomplish tonight that maybe will address perhaps Susan's concern? It says the CHIP will report regularly to the Harbor Committee on recommendations for the action to implement the goals, et cetera. Maybe we need to stronger language that there will be ongoing input from the overall Harbor Committee to the CHIP. So that people will stay abreast of what's going on with the CHIP, sense of any further honing of what I thought were the priorities that we already established. I mean, I feel like we're going all over the place, and we're supposed to be talking about adopting the plan for the subcommittee.
the meeting tonight was to discuss the implementation of the projects that we've been discussing. And
Well, it's to implement the implementation committee to adopt it.
however we do it.
That's what I'm trying to do.
I think if are there other people that have comments about the subcommittee draft, the charge that Lauren described? Any other comments about the structure of that?
I just have one quick question. I'm going through all I can't find the document you guys are talking about in my emails. Could you either email that to me? I don't know what.
I don't think there is one, Barbara.
Which one are you?
We submitted all our own priorities, and then there was supposed to be.
Which one are you talking about, Barbara?
The one that was just up on the screen.
Okay, Lauren, could you send that to Barbara
I haven't
Kenny?
heard of that.
Thank you.
Yes, I will send that.
Thank you, Lauren.
Anybody else?
Yeah, the only thing, this is Tom, my camera, I don't have my camera on, but this is Tom, guys. If you go back to the email from Lauren at the end of October, early November, there is a priorities list that summarized all of our priorities. She did a really nice job on it. There's like 6 major: commercial fleet, infrastructure funding, public assets, harbor sustainability, and citizens engagement. I think that would help you, Matt. That if Lauren, if you could re-forward that to him, maybe. And I think, as I understand this, this committee we're going to vote for tonight would take those 6 areas and then try to form a process from there. So I support it. I think it's a good idea. The only thing I will say, Tim, is that, as I mentioned to you, I would be glad to serve on this committee. I'm just not sure if my situation is going to allow it. So I'll have to let you know as we progress. But before we actually go to the selectmen, I'll have to get back here and let you know if that is a go or not for me. But I'm here to help in any way.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate that.
There's some Q&A. There's a written Q&As in there.
Excuse me?
There's some written Q&As in the meeting.
Oh, people are asking
If you
questions.
go down to the Q&A at the bottom of the screen.
From
I
Jeff.
think one of those may have been for me because I thought I was signed in. I could see all of you, but it took a long time for me to get in. But I would like to see that document that Barbara was just asked because I never saw it. Could have been with all the rush of emails I got that I just missed it. But if somebody could send that to me again, I would appreciate it.
Lauren, can you send that to Jack Creighton, please?
Yes, I will send that to Jack.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Tim.
Could you send it to me too, Lauren, please?
And me also, Susan.
I will
Susan?
resend it to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm looking for it. I can't find it either. There's been so much stuff.
I almost sent it out to everybody and then I thought, no, it's not my place. I should have sent it out to everybody this afternoon when I was
You
drafting.
don't have to send it to me, Lauren. I've got
Yeah,
several.
I mean, whatever makes it easy for us to do work is a good idea, I think.
I've been sitting here for 20 minutes wondering what the heck's going on. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Well, Barbara, I don't think you were alone. It's just you broke the ice and the rest of us said, yeah. Thank you, Barbara.
Okay. The one thing I would like to add to this draft before we decide whether we want to accept it or not is to add one ex officio member to the committee. And what I have proposed, those of you who I think most of you got, hopefully you got the proposed slate that I had. I can say two things about that slate. First of all, I have asked people if they would be willing to serve on it, but I have not gotten anybody that raised their hand and said yes they would. So those are just proposed. But I also would propose that there be an ex officio member, and I suggest that I would be that ex officio member representing the Harbor Committee and not a regular member of the Implementation Committee. So that's number one. And number two, I think we should make it very clear that these are open meetings and that everybody, whether they're Harbor Committee member or town member or whatever, are welcome to those meetings. And anybody that has a particular or specific interest in any of these issues are certainly welcome to provide their input, their suggestions, their comments. So just as it's been pointed out many times, we are advisory all the way through to the select board. We don't make decisions. So being a member doesn't, and being able to vote really doesn't carry any additional weight than being simply invited to as a community member to the meetings.
Tim, can I interrupt? I don't want to contradict you, but I can assure the people on the Harbor Committee that the select board listens very, very carefully to you, and your advisory opinions are important. So yes, somebody listens, you know. And by the way, the hard work that you guys have been doing is greatly appreciated, not just in the select board, but around town. So work well done, and thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Any other comments about the draft subcommittee charge that Lauren has submitted?
Well, I'd like to know if my suggestions are agreed to.
I'm in agreement. Does anybody have any objection to Lisa's agreements or Lisa's suggestions?
I can send.
Okay. So let's, Lauren, if you could make those modifications. Does anybody have any objection to my suggestion of an ex officio member to the committee?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay, hearing none, Lauren, would you make that addition to your proposal?
And then are all those members that are proposed on that, are they all voting members?
There are 1, 2, 5 voting members. Then in that case, there would be 5 voting.
Okay, so the harbor master gets a vote.
The harbor master would vote. The commercial fisherman would vote. The 3 at-large members would vote, and the ex officio member would not, and nor would the ex officio town staff vote. So, to the extent there's a vote, there would be 5 votes if there was a quorum.
Does that work for you, Lori?
Excuse me?
I was asking if that works for Lori. If that seems to make sense to the harbor master.
That's fine, because the only other one that there's only 2 other people that are on the committee that can vote, so that makes sense.
No,
From the harbor committee.
there are 5 members that would vote. You, the commercial
From the
fisherman.
harbor committee.
Well, not necessarily from the harbor committee, but 3 at-large citizens.
Right, no, I was talking about from the harbor committee, I'm sorry.
Okay, there would be 2 automatically, which I assume if Matt agrees to be the fisherman at large or the commercial fisherman, Maybe you're not at large, maybe you're at small. But
Right.
however you feel, if Matt would agree, then there would be 2 members of the, automatically of the Harbor Committee as voting members of this, and then 3 at large, which can either be members of the Harbor Committee or of the community.
The implementation committees that are being formed, 2 or 3 members are going to be town officials. Am I right or wrong there? Or someone that has expertise,
Yes,
someone that has clout,
There
someone that has the
3
selectmen's
ex
ears.
officio- 3
someone
ex
that can
officio
propose
town
budget.
employees,
Pardon me?
3 town employees who are ex officio members of the committee.
Okay. Okay.
Lauren, are you still with us?
I'm here. I've been taking notes.
Oh, you have. And did you make those additions?
I didn't physically make them in the document yet, but I will.
No, I understand, but
Yes.
so you've got those. Okay, so what I'd like to get to is to get a consensus from the committee as to whether we would agree to this and pass this on to, well, I guess we wouldn't pass this on until we had a slate to pass along, but we.
I disagree, Tim. I don't think it's appropriate that we suggest, I would like to endorse this document. I would like to get this rolling. But I don't feel like, I don't want to be endorsing a slate at this point.
No, I'm not suggesting, Lisa, that we endorse a slate. I'm asking if there are any objections to this proposal as written with your suggestions and my suggested change. Are there any objections to that? No.
I'd like to just ask a question. By appointing these new committees, is this going to make things move along? Is this going to make things get done?
I would
I would
hope
think so.
What's the purpose of these committees if it's not to get things done?
Yeah.
We've been working, trying to get things done, but it seems to come to a standstill because we don't have any authority. So is the new implementation committee, are they going to have any clout, any authority, or and are they going to have the same priorities that we do?
Well, that's why I suggested that we make sure that there's strong enough language in the document to say that they come back to the Harbor Committee. It says the CHIP will report regularly to the Harbor Committee on the recommendations. So the Harbor Committee will know what the CHIP is doing. And the important piece for me, Matt, having worked a long time in state, municipal, and federal government, is you're gonna have the right people at the table, okay? You're gonna have
Definitely.
know what they're talking about, not a lot of just well-serving, well-intentioned people. You're gonna have people who are part of the finance department, the public works department, and the planning department. Those are the most important people in the room. And Lauren. First of all,
It's
Lauren.
very important.
So that's the point. I mean, we've been kind of swirling a little bit because of the fact that we're not town employees. We don't know how to make, the train run and how the regular funding goes along.
Are there any other comments about this particular document?
I just want to make a comment to reinforce what both Matt and Lisa pointed out, that to the extent that you're able to put together a process, which I think you're doing a good job putting it together, what gets acted on at the select board, which is ultimately going to have to approve this, is concrete things that have thought out. So we have a decision that could be made that can be, to Matt's point, that can be implemented. And this is what this committee is doing with, and you're working very hard. It's very complicated and it's greatly appreciated. But bring to the select board a concrete, achievable thing that can get done. And I suspect that it will pass, very quickly. At least you'll have my support.
Thanks, Jack. Any further comments about this draft subcommittee charge with the amendments made by Lisa and me? Is there anybody that objects to this? Then if I could just have a vote in favor of it, what we'll do is
I'll second it.
we'll ask Lauren to put it in final form which she can submit to us and to the Board of Selectmen. I don't think the Selectmen has to, not sure, do they have to take any? I'm not sure they have to approve it, but it would be good for them to be involved in it. They would have to approve once we get a slate. But all in favor of approving the Cohasset Harbor Committee draft subcommittee charge for discussion as amended, please signify by saying aye. I'll read your name off, and if you could say aye. Tom Norton,
Aye.
Matt Marr,
Aye.
Lori Gibbons. I know you're not a voter, Lori, but I'd like to know whether we have your support.
Aye.
Thank you. Paula Curran is not here yet. Okay, she's traveling. Jeff Hartwell. Jeff, are you here? No. Lisa.
Aye.
Sean Keneally.
Aye.
Lisa Bryant, or Susan Bryant.
Aye.
Barbara Conway. Barbara Kenny. Sorry, Barbara. Thank you. And Tim Davis. Aye. Okay. So with that, thank you all very much. I suggest what we do. I've submitted a draft slate, but what I suggest is that anybody who is interested, please propose a slate. We will have a meeting, another meeting soon, hopefully next week, to review a slate and hopefully vote on one, so that we could kick off this committee, submit it to the select board, and get it underway. So what we need is, first of all, volunteers. Secondly, volunteers who are willing to roll up their sleeves and get work done. And certainly volunteers with expertise in some of the areas is very helpful. I think that by having this subcommittee and a small subcommittee like this, it will spawn a number of working groups that will specifically work on the priorities as we've all agreed to it. If anybody has any objection to the priorities that we've already agreed to, I think this committee can deal with them. I think it's very difficult to put together a priority list like this with 50 recommendations, because some of them can happen quickly with very little funding. Others take a long time, like the breakwater, and that takes a long time and a lot of money. So there, in between, there are a lot of different ones that can be handled very quickly and very efficiently, and I think we'd get town support for doing them. A dredging program, as an example, that could be done, I think, fairly efficiently. We know where the money has to come from. We know that we need a commercial fishing fleet. We know where the money can come from for that. Excuse me. So there are a lot of different issues that we can deal with. But if we move this forward and have a working subcommittee that can roll up their sleeves and get it done, I think we'll advance the ball. Any other comments?
Yeah, Tim, I know when we had this document put together, Lauren rightfully proposed another subcommittee, which I would like to come back at the next meeting, or maybe even if we need more than just this next committee meeting to, I know we have a governance working group, but I would like to create a governance subcommittee in the same way as we've just created the implementation committee, because a lot of work went into that. I went to many meetings. It hasn't really gone far recently, with a million reasons why, but I think, some of us would like to be involved in moving that forward.
Excellent. Good point. I agree.
And that was, if everyone goes back, and I'm happy to send it out to everybody, October 31st, even with the map on the front of it, lovely photos at all. It's outlined what the proposal is.
Okay. If there are no further comments about that, I'll give you a brief update on a couple of other issues. First of all, many of you may have read or be aware of the new fishing restrictions for the lobster fleet. This has put a tremendous burden on the commercial fishing fleet. And I think that what we as a town need to do is to do everything we can to support the existing fishing fleet and to try to create an infrastructure and a process where we can get new young people coming in to enhance the fishing fleet. There is a project going on Government Island. There's a lot of engineering that's been done. The engineer involved, Carlos Pena from Foth Engineering, has asked that we have a project manager to coordinate the issues between the town and the commercial fishermen and the community. Town manager is working on that, and hopefully in the not too distant future, we will have such a person. It really involves making sure that the design of Government Island and any lift system and docks that we have are both appropriate for the general public, but also most appropriate for the people that use them, particularly the commercial fishermen. So that is going on. The second thing is, and this really is in the hands of our harbor master, Lori, and I've asked Chris Senior this today or yesterday to make sure that Lori has all of the resources she needs to get the docks ready for the fishermen, and the docks and the infrastructure, the utilities that they need by April 1st or depending shortly thereafter, so that the fishermen who have a constrained fishing season can get off to a fast start in the spring. So that's the other thing that I just want to mention. Just kind of a side, not really involving us, but the Parker Avenue boat ramp is moving along. We have to, I think the designs have all been done. And now we have to find the money to actually build it. So that is underway. Nothing much more to report on the use of Cohasset Outer Harbor in terms of the oyster farm that is proposed out there. The lawsuit has been filed. There is in discovery mode at this point, where both sides are doing discovery, and the judge has set a hearing date for the spring. So that's underway. In the meantime, research has turned up that Cohasset itself may well have jurisdiction over Outer Cohasset Harbor. There are two laws that were passed, one in the early 1900s, one in 1953, that specifically give Cohasset jurisdiction over all those waters for specific purposes. So we will be pushing on that, and I've talked to town officials about exerting that jurisdiction. So that may help too. There was one other thing that slips my mind, but those are kind of an update. Oh, by the way, the lighting, I think the lighting that was done in the Cove has, at least for the time being, satisfied the neighbors. And I haven't heard whether, I mean, obviously the dock at Margin Street isn't getting a lot of use at this time of year, but we will pick that up again in the spring to make sure that we have appropriate safety and security lighting, as well as appropriate lighting for the neighbors. I think that's all I have to report today.
Can I ask a quick
Anybody else
question
have
about?
any comments or any thoughts they'd like to mention?
Can I ask a quick question about the Parker Ave boat ramp? Last time, I know I talked to you and Lori about it. There was a question about how it was going to be built. Has that all been resolved as far as the design?
I think it's going to be built in the with a cofferdam. I think that's the proposal.
It's not going to be precast.
What's that?
And it has a,
It's not going to be precast. It's going to be built in
I think,
Coffer
yeah,
Dam?
I think it's going to be a cofferdam and poured concrete.
And do we know what is the timing on that? I mean, obviously
next
there is
fall.
money.
Next fall. You have to find the money
Four,
first.
4 years from the start, so for 4 or 5 years from the start of it all.
It's
Pyramid.
Jesus.
it's been a rocket ship. It's warp speed.
Yeah,
Right.
So, speaking of warp speed, do we have any updates on the issue at the old salt house where the rocks that are under it are impinging on the place that the skips are?
I have no information on that, Susan, I'm afraid.
is there any information on the project, the hotel projects that,
The only thing I can say is that the planning board seems to be generally in favor of moving forward. I attended a planning board meeting a number of weeks ago where the planning members were asked to approve it with contingencies, which they did. And the contingencies came back and there were something like, I think one of the planning board members had something like 90 contingencies he wanted. But
Jesus
I think they got through them all. So the last I know, Matt, it's moving forward. That's all I really know. I haven't heard anything to the contrary.
Lauren, I think was trying to say something.
Yes, may I? Thank you. I just wanted I can speak to that. I work obviously very closely with the planning board as planning director. The planning board's next meeting is January 13th, and they'll be continuing the hearing. It'll be approximately at 7 o'clock, though their meeting starts at 6:30. And though they haven't approved anything yet, they're moving towards the final phases of this process. The public hearing is still open at this time, and the board has been going through at the past 2 meetings proposed draft conditions of approval. So it is a work in progress. The planning board has yet to make a final approval on the project, but it is subject to, it may close on the 13th. At the time, they were debated whether they would close the hearing in December, but there were still some unopened, undetermined items that needed to be discussed. So we're moving through the process. January 13th, if anyone's interested, the planning board agenda is already up and the access information is on it. You can find it on the town website. And then last, while I have your attention, I just wanted to note that we did receive a couple of comments from Jack Buckley in the audience in Q&A. I don't know, Tim, if you want to address those now, I can read them out loud if you'd like. Just please let me know.
Here, I've got them in front of me.
Okay.
Is there a set number of infrastructure projects already slated for action, already prioritized? Will the committee be doing any further project identification priority? Just wondering how specifically defined the infrastructure work is at this point, other than the boat ramp and the various needs I've heard Matt identify. Well, as you know, Jack, we have prioritized the 50 some odd recommendations in the harbor plan. So that's the priority list that we're working on. Generally, what Lauren has done is kind of put them in different buckets. And this is what this new committee would address. Sounds like Tim addressed much of it, but not the first question, which is what's going on? The issue of funding. Is the timeline in place for Seaport Council? That I don't know, Jack. I'm sure there is, but I'm not sure what it is. Oh, okay. Answers moot, no open questions. Okay. Anybody else have any questions, comments?
Tim,
Yeah.
yeah, I just want to add on to what Lauren said on the planning board. One of the things I've heard from a lot of planning board members is they're working very hard and they want people to know that the public comment period is closing soon. So they kind of, if you have thoughts one way or the other about any aspects, probably, especially people in the harbor committee, probably be a good idea to let them know because they value public, input. So if you have some ideas, let them know. They're almost working as hard as the harbor committee.
Thanks, Jack. Okay.
I have just one last
I have a
question.
question, Tim. Getting back to the Government Island Pier, it's moving forward with engineering being done, and also the park around the boat ramp is moving forward with decisions being made. At what point does the town put out to bid or fund it? I mean, like especially the Government Island Pier, isn't that supposed to go out to bid to determine, what it might cost? I mean, how do you determine the cost of things without bidding?
I'm sure it will go out to bid. The design is what they're working on now. They're still working on that. And as you know, there's an issue of a conveyor system versus a lift system versus a combination system. I talked to Carlos just earlier this week. He was going to talk to an engineer who did a retractable conveyor system. So he's going to talk about that. So it's still up in the air in terms of what it's going to look like, how wide the new pier is going to be. He's gotten lots of input, but this is why I have been asking for over a month and a half now for a project engineer that can work between the fishermen, the town, and the engineer. I mean, I can't do that. As much as I enjoy getting in the middle of a hornet's nest, it really is not one of my skill sets. So we're trying to get there.
Okay.
I'll keep you posted. You will be you are definitely going to know when that gets there.
Thanks, Tim.
You bet.
Can I ask a
I
question?
invite you into the hornet's nest, Matt, anytime.
Oh, Jesus, I got enough hornets.
So
Yeah.
I'm going back as I still feel like I'm new and totally, besides not knowing if I've received an email or not, but I probably did, but lost it. But we're talking about which, like with the ramp with Government Island, who is they? Who's talking to these engineers? Who's dealing with the engineers? What part of the government of our town? I don't get that. I'm sorry.
The procurement, Michelle Leary is the one who's the primary contact.
So they're not in, so we're not still discussing those projects? They're not a part
This is
of our
not under our, this is not under our jurisdiction.
at all? Okay. Okay.
It's not?
Not at this point. Not at this point. It's not. I mean, you certainly, as citizens, we have input, but that we have no, as you know, we're advisory. We've advised. We did the harbor plan. We advised. We sent it to the select board, I think almost a year ago.
Okay.
So this is the first, if we in fact move forward and complete this draft, this will be the first substantial piece of work this committee has done since we gave the harbor plan to the select board.
Tim, the committee, harbor committee is the driving force behind all the stuff that needs to get done. So I don't understand why we wouldn't be, why we'd be in the dark about the progress that, the town hired certain individuals to do certain things, and how come the harbor committee is-
Like, how does Matt get to see how does Matt get to know what's going on? Who does he go to? Selectman?
I mean, to be honest with you, I was very disappointed with that meeting we had down in the harbor with the engineer, and I was expecting some plans, but it wasn't much of anything, and so money's being
What was
spent.
that meeting? I mean, was the meeting?
It was just a gathering of the fish. It was a gathering of the fishermen talking to the engineer, and the fishermen need to be involved with the design.
Sure.
I've been saying that all along, and I hope and pray that happens. And
Well, that's why I've been pushing to get a project manager to do that. To be
when the fishermen say they want a certain thing done, and then we're being not questioned on it, but being refused it, or sort of. It's a little it's a little upsetting from on the fisherman side of the point of things. And
I feel your frustration.
who was the meeting under what auspices? Was it a town meeting? I'm just trying to.
No, no, it was just a
Yeah.
gathering. It was a gathering.
Yeah.
Wasn't an illegal meeting, Lisa.
No, I'm not suggesting that for a minute. I'm just trying to think, who was trying to get something done? I mean, who was anybody there who could, as opposed to just talking to each other, was there anyone there who could bring it back to the funders or bring it back to the engineers? I just
Lori was
trying to
there.
get the context.
A lot of people were there. The harbor master was there. I was there. Tim was
Yeah.
there. a lot of-
I was there. Yeah,
Okay.
Jack was there.
Yeah. I remember it. I thought we would have had some progress on that. I thought it was a pretty good meeting. I thought it was a
Yeah.
open meeting.
There's
And
been
I'm
a lot of,
surprised. Well,
there's been a lot of progress. There's been funding has been obtained. There
Yeah,
have been drawings. There have been a lot of drawings. Matt, you've seen some drawings. If you don't have them, I can send them to you. There are a lot of drawings, different things. So there's been a lot of progress, but not enough progress. And again, we're advisory. We don't make decisions, Matt. Remember that.
Is Carlos getting paid?
Yes, he's getting paid. Of course, he's not a volunteer. He's getting paid.
I hope he's.
So there was an RFP issued and then Collis was hired. I'm just trying to figure out the
Why don't you talk to Michelle Leary? She's handled all of that. All I am is a bystander.
yeah, and you're doing a good job, Tim. To Barbara's point, and also to take a little bit of the burden off the Harbor Committee, because, of all the people who are not getting paid, you guys. Maybe we should request Chris Senior to give us an update and a reasonable thing, because there are all these disparate committees and different people and different personnel in town hall on different parts of this. And so maybe we could, request Chris Senior to give us an overview and whatever this committee thinks would be helpful to them. Because, I can just see listening that there are lots of parts, what's this part? What's the relationship? And, I think the role of the town manager is to manage and perhaps give us an update down the line.
makes sense.
I mean, we are volunteers here, but if we'd be a lot more motivated if we saw some progress being made. And
I agree.
so
You're right.
Jack, is that you with your hand up, or is that just your picture?
hope.
No, that's my live self.
Oh, well, I see a hand up here. I guess.
Thanks
Okay.
for reading that question, and thanks, Lauren, for pointing that out. But I was trying to wave my hand saying, no, you already answered it, because I had
Okay.
typed in there.
All
It
right.
sounds like you already answered it, all that kind of stuff. So
Let me just say that once we get this committee going, the subcommittee going, I welcome 100% the involvement of CSCR in these issues that you've raised several times. So we will certainly make sure that that you not only have a forum, but we work together to accomplish some of this. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of fundraising that we can do jointly on some of these things too. So it's not been lost on me. It's just we got to get this thing structured.
no, and I didn't think anything was, and I appreciate that. So thank you. I asked Lauren if I could pop in here, just because I had a quick question about access to info. In the beginning, when I was listening to everybody talk about, send me this, Lauren, please send me that, I'm just wondering, I'm not trying to create work for anybody. I'm wondering if there's a place on the town website for the Harbor Committee to post its work. I don't know if it already exists, so forgive me, Lauren, if I'm ignorant on that. And I know that there's a lot of the work that everybody's doing that cross-references and is cross-indexed with all the other committees. But if there's a place where the average citizen can go to find the relevant documents and whatever's in the public domain, and the multiple items that you hit, Tim, if there was a one-stop shopping place, that would be awesome. And again, I don't know if it already exists, and I don't want to create work for Lauren. I don't want to volunteer. I don't have the time to volunteer to say, oh, I'll post it on the website. So I'm just throwing it out there that it might be helpful, and it might facilitate communication if there is one place where at least you can be pointed, go here, go there.
Well, are these documents usually attachments to the minutes of the postings? I mean, with things that you've sent out in the past, I think, Tim, it could be part of the meeting agenda attachment. I mean, that's what I've seen we've done in the past.
I'm not sure specifically what you're referring to, but
I can speak to Jack's question. I think that's a great suggestion, and I will work with the staff member who updates our town website pages, and we can add these documents. We've been doing this more and more, adding open applications for different, for example, the Conservation Commission or the Zoning Board. You can click and find the applications, but since this isn't technically an application, it just every now and then there's only so many few of us, so it slipped through the cracks on this. I do apologize for the confusion on that. And this document had been sent out so long ago now that our meeting had gotten postponed. So again, I apologize. I should have resent this so it was at the top of everybody's inbox. But I think that's a good suggestion, Jack, and I'll update the Harbor Committee website so that these documents can live there for ease of access. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Jack.
I think that would be really helpful too. Thank you. Because that would save us the problem of didn't I do my homework? I thought I had done my homework. So we could always just check in before the meeting, make sure we're up to date. That'd be great. Thank you.
So,
Okay. And, I'll do the best I can to keep people up to date, but I don't have a means for collecting all of this information other than just what I can report to you from time to time. If anything of import comes up that I can send along, I will. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue to help in any way I can with the fishermen, with Government Island, with the, with whatever else is going on in the harbor. If I can help facilitate getting some of these things done, I will do that. And if there's anything to report, I certainly will. Okay, so I'd like to wrap this up. If any of you would please send along your slate. If you want to volunteer to be on this committee, send a slate. Why don't we say we'll send it to Lauren and she can
committee
put the slates together. And then we will schedule a meeting for next week, hopefully, about this time, so that we can then vote on a slate and get a committee underway.
Can I suggest we have the meetings, and I know everyone loves to meet at 5, and I know it's a burden on town employees to have extended days, but I would like to suggest, and I think it would increase, because we really didn't even get going because people have to come in, rolling emissions because of a 5 o'clock start time. I think a 5:30 time is not too much to ask.
We will, Lauren, we will send out some proposed times and dates. I think that we would like to make it convenient for everybody. I'm sure for you, Lisa, 5:30 would be more convenient, and for others it might be. For me, it's less convenient, but I'm certainly, as my lovely wife tells me, I'm very adaptable. So I'm willing to.
I'll
I
ask
wouldn't
Susie.
said the rest of us. Oh, I'm sorry.
So,
I'm sorry.
okay, so
It's the
any
cheap
other
sounding thing
comments?
now.
I think Lori's
Kim?
trying to say something.
Yeah, Laurie's been trying to say something.
She's been trying to say something for a bit. Now she's.
Yeah. I just want to make a comment. You were saying that you would talk to Chris Senior about giving support, whatever, for getting the docks in
Yeah,
April. Number one, Government Island Dock is in year-round
yeah,
for anybody to use.
right.
Last year, the Fisherman's Dock was put in place on April 21st, and not a single fisherman that uses that dock arrived for at least another 10 days. They always haul out in the wintertime. They didn't come in until well into May. And to have them in by April 1st of this year doesn't make sense since there's a fishing closure until May 1st.
Okay.
So
all right.
getting them in later in May doesn't seem to be an issue. Or
You mean
later
later,
in April, rather.
April, okay. Whatever makes.
Everybody
most
starts
sense.
fishing on the 1st of May and the docks aren't in, and there's going to be a cluster down there. And
They've always been in, Matt. They've always been in the middle of April. They were a little bit later this year because I had asked for guidance from the town in what I should do with this COVID thing.
No, that's understandable.
That's why they were a little bit later.
Well, Lori, I'm sure
But
you're.
nobody who uses those docks were even in the water until the first part of May.
Okay. Well,
They
Lori,
sat empty for 10 days.
I'm
Well,
sure
the
you will.
The COVID thing stopped that. You couldn't do anything. I mean, and they didn't even know if they were going to be able to fish.
I know.
That's right.
Plus
So
the-
I
plus the
and I
rail
was waiting
closure.
for guidance from the town because DPW was working on half staff.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
Well,
I'm
the
sure-
docks and all the other places are put in earlier. It would just be, I mean, I know it might be difficult, but it would be nice to have them in, you know.
Why? Nobody can fish. You guys aren't even in the water. I mean, even right now, most of you, all of you, except for about 4, are finished and have hauled out for the season.
Yeah. Well, there was, if you probably know that, you know, they were going to close the whole state down from the shore out because there's a lawsuit. The feds are suing the state, but luckily it's been postponed till next year. But the public comment period just ended in the middle of December, and now they have to somehow figure out what they're going to do. But everybody seems to think that next year we're going to be shut down February 1st, and from the right from the shore, from the whole from all the way up to the New Hampshire border. So that's.
But right
they're
now you're
concerned-
closed down till May 1st, right?
Well, May 1st. Then they ended up keeping it closed for 2 weeks last year or the year before. They extended a week last year. 2 years before, they extended it 2 weeks. So,
But they moved the line further to the north, correct, for this year?
no, they were going to. That's.
Oh, they
I
did
thought
not.
that
Okay.
Yeah, I thought they did, but they,
All right. That's the last I heard that they had.
because I was wondering, I called a couple guys this morning because I hadn't seen any guys bringing, gangs of gear in now, before the 1st of February, but he said that didn't pass. I mean, they still can't fish to the east in
Right.
Cape Cod Bay, but they can fish to the north. But I think next year it's going to be totally different. And you have
Yeah,
to have
and
the
I mean-
facilities to everybody's got 600 to 800 traps. They're going to all go in the same one dock.
Well, Matt,
Yeah.
the docks are in
Yeah.
time for the beginning of fishing season, and they stay in until you guys have got your gear out. I don't haul that dock in fishermen down in the cove
Yeah, I know.
until Barrett and the Hassens
Yeah.
and the bulk of them are done pulling gear in.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
all done before Christmas.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
that's the way it
The
is now.
only one that was still in this year was Adam, and I talked with him, and he had no problem coming over here to Government Island. He only had a couple of boatloads to do, and it wasn't a problem for him. Because
good.
everybody else here had also finished.
Well,
All right.
I'm not going to
Well,
get it.
As they have in the past years.
Okay, Lori, I'm sure you will do whatever you can and you have to do to get to support the fleet. That's great. I appreciate that. Any other comments for this committee?
I have just one quick sentence. CSER is obviously at the time of year where we're planning our summer research. And as a lot of the initiatives of the Harbor Plan were about collecting data and collecting information, if there's elements that you would like to join with us to have us do, now is a good time to talk to me and Jack Buckley about that. So there's certainly the possibility of doing soundings, current studies, sediment studies, vegetation studies, looking at whether the red filament is algae is affecting the lobsters. So it's a little, it's not just a plug for CSER, it's actually, if there's ways that CSER can help the Harbor Committee achieve the objectives of its plan,
I give you one
Now is a
suggestion,
good time to
Susan.
get up.
Susan, I got one
Yeah,
project.
you want to take, you want to take
I-
it offline and and tell me afterwards? Because I think people are wanting to,
Okay, just study the sediment in the cove from the sewer outfall pipe. That's a number one priority, I would think. Cove is filling in. All right, that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Matt. If there's any further discussion, you can certainly do that offline. With that,
yeah, please.
I'd like to suggest that we adjourn. Could I hear a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Motion, second it.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very
Aye,
much.
second, aye.
See you next week.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Do
you,
we have
Laura.
a
Happy New Year.
second?
Thank
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Lauren.
you.
Good night.